What's up, everybody? You got Ike Jones. We are here inside the newest weekend tailgate. We are talking a little Auburn basketball and also top 5 things that we feel like will impact the upcoming season most for Auburn football. Let's get straight to it.
This is the Weekend Tailgate. Brought to you by Golden's Cast Iron. C-Dub. Ike Jones. Be Will. By G. You are now listening to
The Weekend Tailgate brought to you by the good folks at Golden's Cast Iron. Whether you work out, grill out, or chill out, they've got something right there for you. Make sure you use code Get Your Weight Up to get 15% off of your weights and code TWR for $65 off of fire pits and Kamado grills when you go to goldenscastiron.com/WR. That's going to be right down there in the description of this video, just in case you want to be able to get to that a little bit more quickly. Also, if you are out there in the world of YouTube and you would like to be a part of what we got going on here with the Green Name Gang, we did a watch session yesterday, a little watch party for the game yesterday for Georgia. That was fun, being in here with Green Name Gang, reacting live to the show, to the game. And I've got a lot more film review stuff that I'm going to be doing behind the paywall. So make sure that you tap in with us. $5.99 get you to that patron level. We got supporter level. Also doing a lot of office hours where we just get in and start chatting. Man, y'all holler at us, Green Name Gang. If you are a member and you would like to gift a membership, somebody can get a free membership on you and get 1 month's access to all the great things going on. And just in case you want to be down in the Auburn area, you don't have tickets to the game, but you want to be there in case Auburn gets the win and you want to go roll Toomer's Corner, but you don't have a place to watch the game, Los Amigos Mexican restaurant, they can have the game on there for you. Make sure you hit them up, USA Town Center, 1220 Fox Run Ave, and get a little Mexican food, a little basketball, and then go roll Toomer's Corner. Y'all know what I'm saying? But let's get straight into the conversation for today. I am in here with my guy, C-Dub, and we are going to talk a little bit of Auburn basketball. Y'all make sure y'all share the video too, man. Let's get some more people involved in this conversation this Sunday. But Caesar, I had an opportunity to react to Auburn escaping Athens with a 2-point win versus the Georgia Bulldogs, a good Georgia team, not the same kind of Georgia basketball team of the past. You haven't had a chance to give your thoughts on it. What are you feeling about what you witnessed? Did you get a chance to did you watch the game?
Yeah,
replay?
I did. I was able to see it. We were concerned about this game, Mike, and obviously for good reason, because it came down to the wire. It was a game of runs. It looked like Auburn was going to run away with this at one point. Then Georgia, being at home, rallying behind his crowd, fought his way back into the game. Second half, Auburn slowly began to pull away again, only for Georgia to try to close that gap and nearly tied the game at the end of the game. When I look at the stats for this game, and they were pretty even for the most part. Obviously, Auburn had a little bit more success behind the three. I think free throws kind of separated us from them. We did not. This is not really a good game, a great game from Auburn in a sense. There were a lot of mental mistakes in this game. I think this may have been our worst free throw game where we shot from the free throw line. We're 12 of 20 because we actually have shot really well this year from behind the charity stripe. Didn't really shoot particularly well. I was surprised at some of the misses from Tahad Pettiford, who actually had a good game. Obviously, he was the star of this game. But you just have to survive. While Janai Broome is out, the name of the game is survive. And Auburn's been doing a really good job of that because, again, the SEC is cannibalizing itself. Teams having big wins one moment, lose the next week or the next game. So to see Auburn survive without his best player, overall, I'm pleased with what I'm seeing.
Yeah, listen, you had it right. Auburn did not play particularly well. Now, props to Georgia. Georgia has a good defensive team. They make it tough for teams to get into their action. Super physical team. They like to muddy the game up, but Auburn only shot 39% from the field during this game. That's not good, right? Like, there's no way to kind of make you feel better about shooting 39%. That didn't do that well. But the difference in this Auburn team, if you all recall, last time, which I don't know how you couldn't if you watched this game, last time Auburn went to Athens as the #1 ranked team in the country, Auburn struggled in that game offensively, narrowly escaped with a last-second bucket from Wendell Green. The difference, I think, in this year's team and that team that went into Athens as #1 is Auburn can shoot the ball from deep this year. 43% from three in this game
Yeah.
is really what helped Auburn keep the lead. Tahad Pettiford, you talked about him. He had 24 big points in this game. He hit 5 threes in the game. The ability of Auburn to stretch teams by shooting, by having guys that can shoot. Miles Kelly didn't have a great shooting game,
Chad was 3
but
of 6.
when you got guys, Chad Baker Mazara, who can hit 3 threes, Tahad Pettiford, who can give you 5, and then Miles Kelly, even though he was only 1 of 4, you have to respect the fact that he's out there and it changes the way you can defend.
Yeah.
It changes how teams play defensively in these close games that Auburn inevitably is going to have, but you have difference makers from the outside. You already talked about him a little bit, but let's talk about Tahad Pettiford and the game that he had. So 24 points in this game. He had, in addition to those 24 points, he had 3 rebounds, 2 assists. What did you think about the play of Tahad Pettiford, freshman, biggest game of his career so far, stepping up on the road in Athens to help Auburn preserve the #1 spot in the country?
He has showed up in the biggest of games. I think
Yeah.
that's been the thing. It's one thing to do this and you're playing a non-conference game with opponent that you're expected to beat. Auburn could have very easily have lost this game. And in some of the
Yeah.
games that have been really tight for Auburn, this kid has played his best ball, which is kind of scary for a freshman when you think about it. He played a pretty efficient game when you
Yeah.
think about it, man. Like the kid was 7 of 13. I mean, it's not like he was just jacking up a lot of wild shots. He
Right.
was picking his shots and he was hitting them at crucial moments. Like he was pretty much quieting the crowd throughout the game because after a Georgia run, he would hit a
Right.
critical 3. So ice water in this kid's veins, and he is definitely, when the moment presents himself, he's there and prepared. And I think with Broom being out, there's been a few of these moments and he's answered the call every time. Even in the Duke loss, I was impressed with how he played in that game. Again,
Yeah,
he
if he
plays.
hadn't gotten in foul trouble in that
Yeah,
Duke game, I think Auburn probably. I mean, I think they might have a better chance of winning that game
yeah,
because you have to recall they were still playing JP Pegues minutes in that game, right?
yeah.
And so you don't get probably as many Pegues minutes because he was playing well. But they couldn't, when you saw Pegues struggle, go right back to Tahai because he was in foul trouble and Denver Jones needed a breather. So you might have a different outcome if he stays in that game a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, I have been impressed with him, not just in this game, but just throughout the season, because it's been games like this that we've seen some of his best play. And again, this is someone who's only getting better, Ike, as the season goes on. So I'm curious what that does to the rotation,
Yeah.
because he is gaining more minutes as the season progresses, and he's making a case, Ike, to actually start for this team.
Mm.
So it's
Okay, so let's camp out there for a second.
yeah, all right.
If Tahad Pettiford becomes a starter at the point guard, who gets removed from the off guard rotation? Because do you move Denver Jones to the bench? Do you move Miles Kelly to the bench? Or do you move Chad Baker Mazar to the bench? Because one of those guys has got to move out in
You're
order for
not moving
Pettiford to
Chad.
move in.
You're
Okay,
not
so
moving Chad.
so it's between Miles Kelly and Denver Jones. Who are those guys would you want to see come off of the bench for Auburn?
This is tough because the obvious question would be Denver, but Denver also is so big for you on the defensive side. He's
Right.
taking on the opposition's toughest assignment on the wing, from the wing space. So he's definitely providing a lot of value in terms of what he does when he's on the court. So
Right.
to me, I think this is a complicated one because I think Denver Jones is the better defender.
Mhm.
Obviously, I think Tahad Pettiford is the better offensive player between those two. So again, to me, I think it depends on who is Auburn playing that day.
Mm.
Who is the what is the defensive assignment? Who's the toughest defensive assignment? I don't know if I want to put Tahad Pettiford on the opposition's best player from the wing. right?
If they're playing Mississippi State again, and you got Josh Hubbard starting at the opposing point guard.
Denver. Denver's going to get that, right? So I think it really boils down to matchups. You got a beautiful problem here because
So Tennessee is a good example, right? So let's say Tennessee is the next game, and you've got, now he's a smaller guard, but definitely the engine of that team is the point guard there with Zakai Ziegler. Who would be the starting point guard in that game for you?
I would probably go with Denver.
Okay.
Just from an experience, like again, I think Tahad is an amazing point guard. I think I would take Tahad over Tennessee's point guard. But I think Tennessee's point guard has played a long time. He has that what they call that veteran savviness about himself. He knows how to perhaps how to perhaps get Todd Pettiford in foul trouble. Like there's certain things that he can do that probably wouldn't be able to get away with that with Denver. Because Denver is just as experienced as well. So to me, I would almost put experience on experience in that point.
Gotcha. Listen, I've had people suggest that, hey, Tahad Pettiford needs to be the starting point guard. And I always have to think about, okay, great. I think Todd's amazing. Who do you bench to put him up there? And it always comes back to, oh, that's a tough question. And that's really the good problem that Auburn has, is you've got so many guys who could be starters, right? Yeah. Coach Bruce Pearl has said this a lot. Chaney Johnson could be a starter on a lot of teams across America.
Yeah.
Tahad Pettiford could be a starter on a lot of teams across America, right? Like you could have a lot of guys that are on this team, right? Like right now, you've got Ja'Kai Howard sitting on your bench as one of the best, most electric wing freshmen in the country, and he can barely get minutes because he's playing behind Chad Baker-Mazara and Miles Kelly right now, and then you're rotating Denver Jones in as an off guard additionally, right? And so figuring out how to get minutes for all of these super talented guys is a difficult thing for Coach Pearl to do. I think he's done a good job of keeping. I don't know that Ja'Kai Howard's happy with the number of minutes that he's playing, but hopefully he understands that, hey, that there's a reason why these guys are actually playing well.
I think it helps that you're winning too, Ike, right?
For sure. Oh, for sure.
I think that helps that you're winning. I think that goes a long way towards easing those types of concerns, because I agree with you. He can't be happy with those minutes. But you're playing for the number one team in the country, and the guys that are ahead of you are balling. So I think he gets it. I think he understands it. And I think this has been, if you're doing a great job of coaching up these kids, you're telling them these are guys. I can't think of a better group of guys for you to learn from. Being in these situations, seeing how they handle adversity, seeing how they handle these moments. This is a great opportunity for you to learn, because we're going to need you to be one of those guys next year. Again, that's what you're getting that kid to understand. So I think that Bruce is, again, I think the biggest impressive job Bruce has done is handling the rotation of these guys, because this is why Auburn continues to win games in Broom's absence, because you have so many guys, Ike, that can step in and just contribute for you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to grab a couple of comments here. Then we're going to switch gears and talk a little football, because, I know that's what everybody likes to come in here. I like talking basketball, so I could camp out here for a long time and talk about this. But super chat here from Tim, the Tool Main Taylor says, Pat Adams should get 6th Man of the Year for UGA. What did you think about the officiating in this game? Because in the post game, in the comments of this, a lot of people were very upset and thought that Auburn was getting hosed by the officials in this game. What were your thoughts on the officiating in this one?
The officiating I didn't really start to pay attention to the officiating until late in the game, Ike. I never throughout the game was like, man, these refs are. I didn't think that. So to me, when that happens, I don't think the officiating was bad, but it seemed like towards the end, I'm like, you sure it was 0.6 seconds on that clock?
Right.
Was it really 0.6 seconds? You know what I mean? It seemed like we're going to give Georgia
as many opportunities as we can to figure this out. Yeah,
absolutely. Like it began to feel that way for me. And I think it was Newell who had the last shot.
Yes, 100% pushed off.
Yes. I'm thinking to myself, how does that count?
If If
How does
that
that
shot
count?
goes in after he pushes off and there's no call there, I probably would have. I mean, it would have tied the game, right? And so Auburn would have still had an opportunity to win in overtime. But I probably would have been more on the side of Auburn got hosed in this one,
Yeah.
because he like clearly pushed off. Like it wasn't even like one of those it could go either way. Dylan Cardwell was in one space when he started to jump, and he was like a foot closer to the rim when he landed. And I don't think Dylan Cardwell's intent was to go further away from the guy who he's defending when he jumped. So
Well,
clearly pushed off.
Newell pretty much neutralized Cartwell's ability to defend whatever he was going to do because
Right.
of the push off. Like
Right.
it was obvious. Like Cartwell will foul before he just takes himself out
Correct.
of a play. Right.
Correct.
It was a push off.
Yeah.
Clearly. So as far as my thoughts about the officiating, the thoughts of the officiating begin to creep into my mind late in the game, very late in the game. So there were some things that I begin to wonder about. Again, I think it would have been a bigger story, to your point, if we went into overtime, if that shot had gone in and they had
Right.
counted it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, definitely would have been a different story there of the officiating from me for sure. Let's see here. Corey Weber says, I'll be surprised if Broome isn't back for Tennessee. Auburn has the week off. The next game is Tennessee next Saturday, so a week from yesterday. That will be essentially 2 full weeks of recovery for Johni Broome. I know that's probably going to be the biggest question that Coach Pearl gets in his presser leading up to the Tennessee game. What are your thoughts on that? Johni Broome back for Tennessee potentially?
A lot of people are really optimistic about him coming back for Tennessee. I don't really know, Ike, to be honest with you. Love to see it, and I think it helps that you got a whole nother week. It's not like you got another game until Saturday.
Right.
I would like to see Broome, but I want to see a healthy Broome.
Right.
Like I don't want to see a Broome that's being rushed back for this game. I think with Auburn winning, going 2-0 in his absence, I think especially, and this is something I mentioned to you before we went live, Auburn has a cushion now that it didn't have a week ago.
Right.
Obviously, you know, if you're looking out of conference, Duke is probably going to be number 2 at the end of this week, but Iowa State just dropped a game. Tennessee dropped a game. Ole Miss dropped a game. So it's not like you lose a game, you fall out of first place. Like you're in a good situation with the SEC cannibalizing itself and Auburn continuing to win games. So I think the sense of urgency to try to get Broome back, I don't know if it's there the same way as it was a week ago. Now, from what I've been hearing, it's been speculated that Broome's injury wasn't as serious as they originally feared. So you don't know. So I'm curious to hear how Bruce Pearl addresses those questions this upcoming week.
Yeah, I think what I would like to see is him be available but not start. Right? Like like if you need him, he can go in there and give you some minutes, but like let's not rush him back. I think the biggest thing for Auburn during this week is to figure out how to get Dylan Cardwell more healthy, because he's clearly been hampered in these last couple of games and not been able to play at full speed, full strength. And you need him on the interior for sure for that Tennessee game. Because
this break couldn't have come at a better time.
Yeah, this is the Auburn needed this. Those guys have been pushing themselves and making it work. But yeah, some guys need mental and physical breaks this week, so it's a good time for them to get that. Let's see here. Ant Robinson says, Ike, we are the most consistent team in the nation. I said we were going to drop 2, but in big games, teams are folding. Yes, indeed. Auburn has been consistent all year. This is an interesting thing because I'm going to piggyback off of the thought of consistency, because we've said many times, okay, we don't feel like this team has reached its ceiling. There's more that this team can show you. But at this point in the team, in the season, you kind of are who you are, right? Like, so have we seen the best that this team can offer, even though we know that they can play better? Or is this what we're going to get from this Auburn team, who's going to find ways to just win games, even though they don't play perfectly?
That is a good question when you think about it. The reason why I think we haven't is because of Broome's injury. Because Auburn is a different team now. And they're relying on people in ways that they really didn't have to rely on them in Broome's absence. When Georgia went on runs in this game, I remember thinking to myself, this would be a time where Auburn would say, all right, we're going to stop trying to shoot from outside. Let's go back inside with Broom, reset the game, reset the tone of the game, and let's get back to getting back to work. Well, you didn't have him. So again, there's so many ways that Auburn can beat you, but I'm wondering with Broom returning, what does that look like?
Right.
For guys who had amazing games, what does that do for their confidence level? Like, how does this game, his team look like in Broom's? Because again, this is turning out to potentially be a huge blessing in disguise because other guys are lifting their ceiling.
Yeah.
Broom comes back. What does this team look like? Yet to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you know for sure as a coaching staff is what rotations you can have that don't include Janai Broom, but you can still, all right, cool. This is my best defensive rotation that doesn't include Janai. This is my best offensive rotation that doesn't include Janai. And as long as fouls aren't an issue in that, you can go to those rotations and get Broom a rest and feel like, okay, this is what I can call with these guys on the floor. This is what I can expect from production from those guys while they're on the floor. And this is kind of where we are in the score and all of those things. You can feel better about, okay, I can play him less minutes because I know these guys can produce in these ways if I get them these kind of looks, or this is what I can kind of anticipate from them. So yeah, to your point, definitely a blessing in disguise, because then when you insert Janai Broom back into that, you really should have a stronger grasp of how good your team can be and confidence from a coaching staff perspective and a player perspective. If we can get this done, hey, big fella, go sit down for a couple of minutes. You're good. You can rest. We can get you a 5-minute break right here in the middle of this game so that you're available for the last 10 and be fine, because we've got guys that we know we can go to.
And Auburn, like the guys who I was concerned about getting in foul trouble, didn't get in foul trouble in this game.
Did a good job of defending without fouling this game, for sure.
You know how to not foul now.
Right.
Like, you're learning how to stay in the game and impact the game. So if you're learning how to do that, even more so when Broom sits down, you're not looking at your clock waiting on him to return.
Right.
Because again, this team has shown we can operate, play good defense, play good offense without Broom. That's a scary proposition for other teams when Chaney Johnson isn't a part of the game plan. He was part of the game plan for Georgia yesterday. That's why I didn't get all bent out of shape that he didn't really have a big game, because they were trying to take him away, and they did that with their size and bigs down in the post. When he's not a part of the game plan, he's going to blindside you if he figures out how to stay in games and play the way we've seen him play, especially against Mississippi State. That's not that's a scary proposition for future opponents.
Yeah. Absolutely. This has been a good topic, and we'll switch gears after this to football. Does Tahad Pettiford leave after this year, or does he need another year before heading to the league? What say you about the prospects of NBA Tahad Pettiford?
I think it's to be determined. I don't know how many more 24-point games we're going to see out of this kid that may change some of that. But I will say that NIL has done an amazing job of keeping kids at school longer.
Right.
I think at the very least, he has an amazing NIL bag. He's getting the Janai Broom NIL special after this season to keep him here, because Auburn's losing a lot of guys as it is.
Yeah.
And so if you're Bruce Pearl, you again, this is another, just like you would talk to Ja'Kai Howard, you're talking to Tahad Pettiford. It's like, hey, this is your team. This was Broom's team this year. We got him to come back. He probably could have gone off to the NBA this year. But this is his team. This will be your team as we build around you and what you do well.
Right.
That's probably the pitch to those guys, because you're losing a lot of experienced players after this season. So again, you don't want to flip your entire roster over because guys are going to the league. You do want to keep him, and I think NIL helps you do that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it will have to do, and this is what I've said when asked this question before, with what does his draft stock actually look like, right? Is he going to go somewhere and they're going to make him a, top 10 pick? Is he going to be a lottery pick? If he's not a lottery pick, then there's no need to rush off to the NBA and go sit on the bench somewhere. You can stay at Auburn for another year, still be able to get your money, and potentially compete for another championship. Hopefully they get the championship this year and he come back to compete for another championship. And then, to your point, it's going to be more your squad this next year. Even if Denver Jones comes back because he gets his, waiver for, having the year at JUCO, and even if Chad Baker Mazara comes back, you can move Denver now to the 2 guard, start Tahad, and you could have Tahad, Denver, Chad as your starting 3 guards basically out there, and then you got to figure out how to replenish your front court then. But that's a really good team to start off with, and then you have Ja'Kai Howard as your first guy off the bench. That's pretty darn good. I mean, so that I think Ja'Kai is the one that you're more worried about if you do bring both Denver and Chad back, as because Ja'Kai would want to say, "Hey, it's my time to be the guy," but you're bringing these guys back. I'm going to be back on the bench again, even if you're going to get more minutes. You're still not going to be a starter in that scenario. They're not going to start Ja'Kai Howard over Denver Jones or Chad Baker Mazara. So that's the one I'd be more worried about. But I think you can move Tahad to a starting guard position and be fine for next season. But we shall see. A lot of those questions yet to be answered there.
Yeah.
All right. Let's shift gears here. Before we go to a break, we are going to talk a little bit about what we consider to be the top 5 moves, most impactful moves during the offseason for Auburn football. We got 5 of them here. We're going to count them down from number 5 to number 1. And we'll do that, and then we'll go to a break, and then we'll come back and we'll get some more comments and continue our thing. Does that sound good to everybody? Good, great, let's do it. Number 5 here. Number 5 of the things that happened during the offseason that are going to have the biggest impact, the addition of a new weapon at wide receiver, and Eric Singleton Jr. to this wide receiver room. Comes in at number 5. Why is this so impactful in your mind, Caesar?
I think Frazier is the returning tight end for Auburn.
Correct.
You don't have the depth that you once had at that tight end position. There was a lot of guys that you can rotate in and out based on the scenario. And so a lot of the talk through Hugh Freeze's first 2 seasons was how much 12 personnel is Auburn going to be in? Mm-hmm. And how different is that from the type of personnel that Hugh Freeze has worked with at prior stops, right? If you remember Hugh Freeze, he was 3 wide, 4 wide type receivers where he was going, and athletes all across the field. As he's beginning to bring in talent, obviously Malcolm Simmons became a huge revelation last year. That's a slot guy. Mm-hmm. Eric Singleton is believed to be another slot guy. Now, he could be on the outside at certain times, but he was mostly effective as a slot guy, which tells me that how Auburn basically lines up may really start to begin to resemble the type of offense Hugh Freeze has traditionally run in the past with 3-4 wide receiver sets, which signals to me we're really beginning to get into what a Hugh Freeze offense looks like in year 3. So to me, I think Eric Singleton, obviously we saw how talented this kid is. The game he had against Georgia, played a lot of snaps, an experienced guy in the room, can help to bring the younger receivers along. All the stuff, the things that Keandre Lambert-Smith was. We think that he can be that. But I also think that because you have guys in the slot that you're building up now, you got some talented guys. We still haven't even seen what Kane can do. Bryce Kane can do. So to me, this signals that this offense is really beginning to transition into the type of offense that Hugh Freeze is comfortable with running and the type of attack that we haven't seen in a while. So I think this is a big deal to me.
Speed is the thing that comes to mind immediately when I think about him, and I don't know what the speed has looked like if you put them all in the foot race type of thing before now, but I'd be willing to say this might be the fastest overall wide receiver room that Auburn has had. When you think about how fast Cam Coleman is, how fast Perry Thompson is, how fast Bryce Kane is, how fast Malcolm Simmons is, and now you add an Eric Singleton into that room as well. There's just a lot of speed in this room to be able to do all of the things that should allow you to be a very explosive offense. I've talked about this with Mike G before. Auburn was explosive last year with a lot of guys out there.
Yeah.
This year, there's no reason why you can't I mean, you should be able to threaten with speed so much that teams have to play too high safety all the time because it's like, yo, like, how do we stop them from just two-step dropping and just letting it go over the top, for 60 yards over and over again with all like we can run four verts all day, I guess, and just make you
Yeah.
have to figure it out. And if it's not open, check down to a running back who is out here in space all alone versus a linebacker, right? If they just really wanted to do that, it feels like they could do that all day with
Right.
the amount of speed that they have out here. Um, but like, how do you think? And you're not an offensive coordinator, but how do you think Coach Freeze figures out how to rotate all these? And I don't even know how fast Horatio Fields is. I didn't even mention him in this.
We didn't right.
And
That's
for all
again. That's
all the
another.
freshmen that are out
Yeah.
there, and the tight end weapons that, like, we didn't even talk about all that yet. The running backs that could catch the ball out of the backfield. How do you figure to feel like, how's he going to spread the ball around to all these guys?
First off, I think there's four other points that we want to definitely discuss. But
Mhm.
one of the things that I've talked in this offseason, Ike, is the importance of extending drives.
Mhm.
And I think there's been times where Auburn's offense has gone flat in games, and because of that, you're unable to see a lot of the younger guys, the Perry Thompsons, get an opportunity. And I think that we forced Malcolm Simmons into the game at times because
Mm.
the offense was struggling. I think if you begin to get the offense, and that's let's be clear, the offense took a major steps forward statistically in year two. But if you're able to sustain drives, and if you're not uh failing to convert once you get in the red zone, because that's been another one of Auburn's issues, there's more snaps available.
Mm.
And I think if this offense takes another step forward, you're going to have opportunity to rotate in different guys and in different types of packages. And I think you'll be able to see these guys get their fair share of snaps and opportunities to catch the ball. Not just get out there and block, but you're
Mm.
going to get out there and have the ball thrown your way. And so I think a big part of it is a lot of the dysfunction that we've seen offensively the first 2 years. Hopefully that begins to remedy itself, and which will create opportunities not only for the wide receivers but our running backs as well.
Right.
Again, it was. I'm hoping to see that it's more of a committee now that Jarquez has moved on. But again, we'll see. But again, if you're having short drives, giving the ball back to the other opponent, that's going to be difficult for you to have a rotation night.
Right. Right. Yeah, definitely got to stay on the field longer, and hopefully guys get more opportunities. All right, we're going to take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors, but we have the top four coming on the other side of this break of things that we think are the most impactful things that happened to Auburn football during the offseason as we are now gearing up for spring Auburn's football, which is crazy. It feels like they're already back in school. But anyway, you're watching the Weekend Tailgate. We'll be right back with more Auburn football talk.
This edition of the War Report is brought to you by our generous sponsors. The Opelika Rage Room in Opelika, Alabama. The Rage Room is a place where anger and stress find their ultimate release. Call or text 334-777-6688 to set up a session today, or check them out online at opelika.rageroom.com. Golden's Cast Iron. Whether you work out, grill out, or chill out, you deserve the best life possible, and Golden's Cast Iron is here to provide the tools to help you do it. Check them out at goldenscastiron.com.
As always, thank you to the sponsors of the War Report. Thank you to those of you who are part of the Green Name Gang. Make sure you get your Green Name active if you want to be a part of the watch parties that we are doing. If you want to hear me go crazy about stuff happening during the games, it's been cool. Everybody said they've been having a good time watching along during the games if you're not at the games yourself, and getting that commentary. So make sure you're part of Green Name Gang to get that going. Film reviews, of course, are popping off, and we got office hours that we're doing behind the paywall. So make sure you get active in that. If you are a member and you would like to gift a membership, you can do that. Somebody get a free month of membership on you, and they can enjoy those benefits for at least 30 days. And of course, you can holler at our folks over at Manscaped, maybe if you need to be able to get a gift. Valentine's season is right on the horizon, ladies. If you want to give a gift to your man, guys, if you want to be able to get your grooming game on point for Valentine's season, make sure you head over to manscaped.com. Use code rapport when you do to get 20% off plus free shipping over at Manscaped, and the boys will definitely thank you. Also, make sure that you holler at our folks over at Rogue Shop. All these close games Auburn's been having, maybe it's causing you a little anxiety. Head over to rogueshop.com. Use code rapport when you do. That gets you 15% off over at Rogue Shop. And that is America's #1 online dispensary for sleep, stress, pain, anxiety relief. Rogue Shop's got a remedy for you. That'll tell them the folks at the War Report sent you when you use code rapport. Let's get back over into the commentary, talking about now the top 4 things Auburn football has done in this offseason that are impactful. Before we do that, let's get a couple of comments here that we've already had talking about this stuff. Lawrence Robinson jumps in and he says, facts, Ike, 2 high safeties should lead to light boxes for our running backs. Listen, man, threaten them vertically. They got to figure out how to stop it. You can't play single high when you're doing that. They either have to go to a cover 3, cover 2, something. You got to put more folks back there deep if you're able to hit them over the head often, which means they can't commit as many to the box, which means you should be able to run the football more effectively. What do you think about that?
I agree. And I think that is a good place to be because you still have a lot of talent in the running back room. Also, too, you're it's death by 1,000 cuts. So Auburn learning how to move the ball methodically down the field is just going to be terrifying for opposing defenses because, again, you would think that we're taking away the big play. Auburn has to move the ball slowly. They can make mistakes, but again, if you got weapons like what Auburn has, it's no problem. And then if you have a running quarterback that we have in Jackson Arnold, like there's so many different things you have to account for that putting 2 safeties high, it's like pick your poison. It's pick your poison, especially if everything pans out the way Auburn fans hope it does.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get back over into this and talk a little bit about what we have as the number 4 biggest impactful thing that happened for Auburn football during the offseason. And at number 4, it is the additions of offensive linemen, Xavier Chaplin, Mason Murphy, both offensive tackles, not to mention Isaiah Miller deciding he was going to come back, Dylan Wade deciding he would be back, and Jeremiah Wright being back. The offensive line having senior Connor Lew, of course, going to be back. There was no really doubt about him. But what do you feel about the additions, particularly Xavier Chaplin, during the offseason at the tackle spot?
Big addition, man. Very big addition here. And again, this may be, is this going to be Auburn's best offensive line it's had in a while?
I mean, on paper, you would assume that, yes.
Let me jump off real quick, Ike. My battery's doing something. Let me.
All good. Yeah, but yeah, I would assume that this is going to be on paper, the best offensive line that Auburn has had in a minute. And I don't really know. Listen, thought Percy Lewis was going to be a guy for Auburn last year. That didn't pan out from the transfer portal. But, Percy Lewis had all the raw tools, but he didn't play a lot of snaps before. So you were really kind of projecting with Percy Lewis more so than knowing what he was going to provide for you. Xavier Chaplin has, on the other hand, played a lot of minutes in a Power 4 conference, albeit the ACC, right? Like, I get it. It's the ACC, so it's not like he played in the Big Ten or the SEC. But he's gotten key snaps in a Power 4 conference. Same thing with Mason Murphy. He played in the Big Ten last year, right? So you've got guys, I think, this year, again, with a guy like Isaiah Miller coming back, who played well for Auburn last year. The only thing. Yeah. Injuries was the only thing that hampered him last year. So if he can stay healthy, or if he's not able to stay healthy, you can rotate more guys in now to be able to absorb that type of situation. I think, yes, this might be, on paper, the best offensive line that Auburn has had in a while. Yeah. And I don't know how many years I can go. I can't recount all the offense, but it seems like offensive line has been a story way too often in the past 10 years of Auburn football. Definitely on paper, the best offensive line Auburn's got coming.
Fingers crossed, you've addressed the huge question mark at left tackle, right? Dylan Wade, who's probably more of a true guard in this sense,
Right.
moves back to his more natural position. You thought you addressed that with Percy Miller last year,
Right.
or Percy Lewis. I'm sorry.
Percy Lewis, yeah.
You thought you addressed that with him last year, but now you're bringing in a guy who graded out well at that position, played a lot of snaps at the left tackle position. He slides in and actually is serviceable. Yes, this is probably going to be easily one of the most experienced lines in the SEC that you have returning, and a line that has worked well together for the most part. It's not like you're putting in a lot of new pieces. Again, if guys stay healthy in this game, in this season, this offensive line can be really serviceable for Auburn's offense. And again, this is something that as Auburn's offense takes to the next step, you got to have a solid offensive line. And kudos to Hugh Freeze and staff for addressing the issues along offensive line from the moment he got here.
Yeah, to your point, if you get Miller back and healthy, you keep Dylan Wade on the interior, you keep Jeremiah Wright on the interior, and you have Connor Lew there on the interior. 4 of your 5 guys that you had penciled in as starters last year and played significant snaps for you this year are going to be back along that offensive line. And then you add a guy like Xavier Chaplin over on the other side to solidify the spot that you thought you were going to have solidified with Percy Lewis. You've got a good amount of continuity and what you perceive to be an upgrade at the spot that you're losing. Then you've still got guys that are playing behind them that people are thinking are going to be good, like Drake Carter, like Braden Joyner, who was, all freshman team last year in the SEC, right? You've got, some true freshmen that are coming in that people think are like Broderick Shull, that people think are going to be really good for you, right? And so now you're starting to build. And again, I haven't even mentioned Mason Murphy they brought in from the transfer portal who can be there, right? You've got enough guys. Tate Johnson on the interior, right? Like I can just rattle off names of people who Auburn fans, people who do all of the ratings that think are going to be really good, just haven't had their opportunity yet, that are just sitting on the bench waiting for a chance to get out there. Tyler Johnson, who was supposed to come in, right? Like I can do this for a minute, right? The offensive line should be in a good place. The question I'm going to have is, once you get past the spring, how many of those depth pieces do you have that stick around and say, all right, I know I'm not going to get a chance to start, but I'm going to stay put where I am because I am one snap away from it, right? Because EJ Harris was like, I know I'm probably next up there, but I'm out of here. I'm going to go somewhere else, right? So post spring, we might be having a different reality, a different conversation about this. But for right now, entering the spring, it is if I'm sitting here thinking about places where I'm worried about Auburn, for the first time in a long time, offensive line is not one of them.
Yeah, indeed. I agree with that.
All right. Next up at number 3, most impactful things for Auburn during the offseason. It's not an addition this time. The departure of Josh Aldridge as the linebacker coach. How important do you feel like Josh Aldridge was to the success of the defense, success in defensive recruiting, all of those things? What kind of impact is not having Josh Aldridge going to have on this team this year?
I think the impact here, because we, talking about his replacement, which we'll get to in a minute, he's a great coach. He's a really good coach. I've heard positive things about him even before he arrived at Auburn. I think that as a recruiter, he did work. He did a lot of work.
He was rated, I think, one of the top 10 recruiters in the country based upon the haul of guys that he brought in this past class.
From the moment he got here, though, Ike, I mean, the kids that he was going after, who he flipped, like the edge position, which was another position, if you recall, like offensive line, that was an area of concern for Auburn, because I think right before Hugh Freeze got here, we were looking for bodies. Upon his departure, you're not worried about depth at the edge position these days. And that's credit to the job that Aldridge has done since he's been here. Again, I think we can talk about how good he is as a coach. Again, you had at one point 3 different defensive coordinators on this staff on the defensive side of the ball. And Aldridge was one of those. He
Right.
was Hugh Freeze as a defensive coordinator when he was at Liberty. So obviously, given the job that he was doing in Auburn, someone was going to come pluck him. He wasn't going to stay in that position for too much longer. And Auburn was fortunate to have him for the time that he did because he did tremendous work. So obviously, that's a big void that Auburn was going to have to fill. And I was curious as to what they were going to do in order to replace him.
Yeah, and the answer to that was Rock Bellantoni, right? Like he's in now as your edge coach, as your supplemental linebacker coach, and he's going to be handling that position. But from a recruiting standpoint, yet to be seen whether or not Rock can be that kind of guy to bring like he's a good relationship guy, right? Like players love playing, having him as their coach. Is he going to be able to be the guy out there flipping those big recruits, or is Hugh Freeze like, man, I got a recruiting machine, man. I just need somebody to make sure. The Rock move to me feels less about acquiring new talent and more about keeping the guys in the building happy, because the re-recruitment is such a huge thing right now with the transfer portal being the way that it is. It feels like Rock is a guy who can build the relationships with the current players and players that you bring into the fold where they will feel, okay, I like playing for Coach Rock. He understands, blah, blah, blah. That feels like that kind of move for me.
I have to agree with that. I have to agree with that guy. I don't think, and I'm not saying that Rock can't recruit. Obviously, most coaches can recruit, right? Yeah. But I didn't think, oh, Hugh Freeze hired a recruiter here.
Yeah.
That wasn't the first thing that came to my mind. The things that you hear about Rock is good coach. Players, again, to your point, players love him, right? So obviously, you understand as a coach the importance of having guys on your staff that are relationship mind oriented. And again, to your point, re-recruiting your players, especially when you have a lot of talented at the edge position, is going to be pivotal for you. So you got to have a guy coaching that position that gets it, I think. And also is one that, again, if he were to leave, you're worried about those kids because they are beholden to him. And I think Rock is that type of guy. Again, I think he'll do well recruiting, but I'm looking at a guy who's really been brought on to take care of the guys we currently got in the room. And we got amazing kids in that room.
Absolutely. Some very good, talented guys that you hope stay patient enough to wait for their turn. And maybe he's going to be crucial in keeping those guys in that room for the long haul. All right, let's move on to number 2 here in our countdown to number 1 most impactful things for the offseason for Auburn football. Number 2 is the most important position on the field, one that Auburn has not done a good job of having impactful players in that position that played consistently for a while, and that is Jackson Arnold in from the transfer portal. Most impactful for a lot of reasons. But why do you feel like this deserves the number 2 spot?
This QB room has turned over completely from a scholarship standpoint. Everyone who's going to be in the room this year, not here the year prior. And I think that bringing in Jackson Arnold, this was perhaps one of the most important personnel moves. Obviously, you need a quarterback, you need a trigger man. But after the Peyton Thorne experiment, Hugh Freeze can't afford to go over 2 in terms of a transfer quarterback.
True.
Obviously, this is a talented kid. When he came out of high school, heralded. And I think it's well documented some of the issues systemically going on in Oklahoma that made it difficult for him or any other quarterback to succeed. They fired the offensive coordinator mid-season on top of all of this, guys.
Right.
So it's not like Jackson Arnold just landed into an ideal situation. Here, you have to think that a lot of those issues have been remedied because you got a lot of talent surrounding this kid. We already talked about the offensive line, which we think is going to be more improved from an Auburn standpoint, but it's definitely going to be much more improved from an Oklahoma standpoint, right? Knock on wood, everyone stays healthy. But bringing him in, I think, is going to be interesting to see is Jackson Arnold good for Auburn, and is Auburn good for Jackson Arnold? Like this
Right.
is a marrying of two entities that are desperate to take a step forward in 2025.
For sure.
And I think for Hugh Freeze, he has to get this one right.
Yeah.
Has to get this one right, because I mean, we all agree there's no QB competition. Jackson Arnold is going to be, he still stays healthy, the starting quarterback going into 2025 season. So I think Auburn's future, Hugh Freeze's future, rests upon the shoulders of how well Jackson Arnold does in 2025. This was a huge pickup.
Yeah. I mean, listen, you needed a guy that you felt like could be ready to go play next year to start the season, right? And it's clear to me, they were not 100% there on any of the guys that were currently in the room. Holden Geriner, Hank Brown, Walker White. We don't know if we are ready to turn the keys over to any of you guys day one, start of spring camp, and not bring anybody else into the room, right? Like they had to go, they could have just gone if Holden, Hank, Walker all stay and you have 3 active, guys, and then you bring Deuce Knight in there. They could have just went and added the kid from Stanford and he'd have been the 5th quarterback and they'd have been fine, right? But Holden was 1 foot out of the door to begin it. So you knew transfer portal opens, Holden's out of here. But your hope was that you could hold on to Hank Brown, hold on to Walker White, and you only have to add 1 more quarterback to that room. Maybe it is Ashton Daniels and then somebody else who's not, a threat to one of those guys. But the minute Hank started tiptoeing out the door, they had to go get somebody. Like you absolutely had to go get someone. But again, I don't even know if Hank, Walker, Holden stay that they don't go get a Jackson Arnold, because I don't think that they were ready to say, you guys are the guy. And all it's going to take is 1 spring for me to feel confident enough for you to be that guy. But as soon as Jackson Arnold hit the door, Walker White left. And that's why, to me, it raises the impact of the acquisition of Jackson Arnold, because it completely flipped your quarterback room. Like you went from,
right,
we got a guy, and then we've got some potential next up guys, and they're battling out for QB2, Walker White, Deuce Knight. Which one of these guys is going to be the heir apparent? Is Walker going to step into QB2 and be ready to take the reins, and Deuce is going to have to wait 1 more year? It went from that to, are they going to have enough bodies in the spring to be able to make sure that we can run practices the way that we need to? And they had to go get a guy in street clothes that hung it up to go bring in another arm, right? Like, so it changed so drastically. And to your point, that means it's gotta work. Like you have no, it's either gotta work or you have to hope Deuce Knight is a prodigy,
right?
Because I don't know that Ashton Daniels really is gonna come in the summer and become the guy, right? Like he feels like a breaking case of emergency more than a solid next.
He's in there because Jackson Arnold got injured,
right? So yeah, Jackson Arnold has to work now, right? Like, and that's why it's so impactful. Like you don't really have a safety net. You have what you hope can be a safety net, can swoop in and save you, but not a surefire, okay, this guy's been in my system for a while, he's a good bridge quarterback, and if he does really well, great, then we'll run with it. You don't have that right now. You've got this is my guy, and God, I really hope I don't have to go to the next one.
Right.
Because if I do, we're in a bad place. And again, not because those other guys aren't talented, it's because I don't really know what I have in Deuce Knight yet. I know his talent
everyone's
is.
an unknown.
Yeah.
Everybody's an unknown. So your featured QB is he's an unknown as well. So again, you're hoping, wishing that this I mean, you're doing that with all of your players, right? But for these guys to have not even been in this system a whole year, yeah, it's a big deal. It's a very big deal.
Definitely a big impact. And of course, because it's the quarterback, it's going to be a huge impact. But it is not number 1 on our list. Number 1 most impactful thing. Appreciate everybody who's liked the video already. Make sure you go ahead and give a thumbs up if you haven't on the video. If you haven't shared the video, go ahead and do that. If you need to subscribe to the channel, please do that. But the number 1 on our list of things that have the biggest impact on Auburn coming up into this season is the departure of Charles Kelly as the co-defensive coordinator there under DJ Durkin, leaving to go be the head coach at Jacksonville State. What are you feeling about it?
This was a big deal. This was definitely a big deal because I thought Charles Kelly was a steal a year prior in terms of what they did with the defensive staff. I was excited about him as much as I was about DJ Durkin. I'm probably a little bit more excited about what he did with the safety position. Him and Coach Crime Dog, like they were how they had the secondary playing on the back end of this season was spectacular. There was a lot of new faces out there. Guys looked lost early in the season, but they tightened up as the season progressed. And I've already stated on several occasions how impactful Charles Kelly has been in terms of in-state recruiting.
Yeah. And you saw that the minute that he announced that he was leaving, the recruits who said, man, I was really looking forward to being coached by this guy, and he's not going to be here anymore.
Yeah. And so this man has, I mean, he went to Auburn. He knows the state really well. He knows the high school coaches really well. In fact, he's plugged some high school coaches to join his staff. Like that's how plugged in he is with this state. I don't know that Auburn has replaced him with someone who has that level of expertise and skill in terms of recruiting and knowing the state as well as he does. That was a big loss, but it was a promotion of sorts for him, obviously, because he's going from an assistant defensive coordinator at Colorado the year prior to co-defensive coordinator, safeties coach at Auburn, to head coach at Jacksonville State.
Right.
Kudos to him. Obviously, he wanted to get to being a head coach, and he's doing it in the state of Alabama. Couldn't have been a better scenario for an amazing man. But the void that I think he leaves, just being here a year, like this was a huge blow. I think for someone like DJ Durkin, you need guys like Coach Crime, and Coach Kelly to come in and really hold it. Like he didn't have to worry about the secondary. He could really coach the linebackers and the front seven because that's his expertise. Right. And you got some legends coaching the secondary for you. So for him to exit, obviously this led to the promotion of TJ Rushing, which you're going to get into. But this was a huge void because of the boost that we clearly saw in recruiting when Charles Kelly joined the staff.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me, I thought Charles Kelly was ready to retire at Auburn, right? And so it was surprising for me, even though it is a position, I mean, move up, right? It's not like he moved laterally somewhere else. He is getting a head coaching position. I thought, this was going to be the last stop for him. Auburn was going to finally have a situation where, you've got Charles Kelly here. And I don't know how long DJ Durkin's going to. I would have thought DJ Durkin would have hit the door before Charles Kelly did. So I thought we would have a couple of years of DJ Durkin as the defensive coordinator. Then he moves on to go get a head coaching job somewhere. Charles Kelly becomes the de facto new defensive coordinator because he was the co-DC before. You keep all the defensive talent, just kind of moving through that system and figuring out. I thought that was what the progression was going to be. So the surprise of that in the short amount of time that you had Charles Kelly on staff and the impact that he has on the recruiting is what makes this big for me. But to your point, it does give you room for a Durkin guy to now move up into a spot in TJ Rushing to be a part of the staff. So it lessens, I think, the blow from a continuity standpoint, but yet to be seen how it's going to impact from a recruiting standpoint, because we've said many times, and as much as people don't like to hear it, players commit to coaches more than they do institutions. Yeah. And though DJ Durkin is a phenomenal coach at defensive coordinator, some of those guys committed to Auburn because of Charles Kelly, not because DJ Durkin was the defensive coordinator, not because Hugh Freeze was the head coach, not because we believe in Auburn and we love it. They wanted to be coached by Coach Crime or they wanted to be coached by Coach Kelly, like plain and simple. That's what they wanted. and they're not going to get that opportunity right now. But you're still going to have quality coaches, and your hope is that they get in here and they develop relationships with these new guys. CJ Rushing, who is a good coach in his own right, Coach Crime, who is a legend in his own right, and it doesn't impact anything going forward. But for right now, I think that has to be in the back of your mind. Like, how much do those relationships matter to those young men now that they've gotten into the building? And what is the impact? Because, you're not just recruiting for this cycle. Like, he was having conversations with guys in the 26 cycle and the 27 cycle already. How do you maintain those relationships and keep those going?
T-Rod from Georgia walks in the kid's room. Alabama's defensive coach walks into a room. I don't care. I'm not worried about it. Because Auburn had Charles Kelly, right? Like, I don't care who walks into a living room of this big time kid. Obviously, NIL will play a part and whatnot, but I'm not concerned about it, Ike, because I know who Auburn has.
Right.
I don't have that confidence today. I'm not saying that TJ Rushing can't recruit. He's probably, who knows, we're talking about TJ Rushing in a completely different way a year from now.
Right.
But when Auburn had Charles Kelly, I don't care what these other schools are doing, because we have a guy who has proven he's a closer. He's proven he can bring in talent. I'm not worried about it.
Right.
Not as confident today. And I think that's due to the void Charles Kelly left behind.
Right. And to the point here that J-Dub is like, we thought this with Garrett, and they kept it moving without him, and you're seeing the dividends being played there. Sure. Don't know yet. So today I have no idea. And because I don't know, and I knew what I had.
That's
with
what
Charles
I'm hoping
Kelly.
for.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping for. But again, that remains to be seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, that's our top 5 right there. I want to hear you all's top 5 down in the comment section. If you're watching this video later, we're going to get over here into the chat and see what you all are talking about before we get out of here. Starting with our super chats. Of course, Mr. Gibson gets us jumped off and says, Freeze has not out-recruited Chizik or Gus. I'm tired of hearing about recruiting that has amounted to nothing. Why is Austin still on staff? Will play calling improve? That's a lot there, Mr. Gibson. First and foremost, I'd argue that that's not true, that Coach Freeze has not out-recruited Chizik or Gus. I think the numbers kind of speak for themselves in the number of blue chip guys that are out there. Now, the results on the field are different, right? Like, that's not right. I don't even know that that's arguable, that those guys who won a championship, went to a national title game, perennially was around 7 to 8 wins, had better results on the field. But that doesn't mean that their teams were more talented than Auburn's current construction is.
Was there a Cam Newton in the past 2 recruiting portal cycles that you recall, Ike?
I don't know that there was anybody as impactful as Cam Newton that has transferred since maybe Jaden Daniels to LSU a couple of years ago. Like a quarterback that clearly elevates your team above where they were before I don't know that there's been a quarterback that impactful since the Jaden Daniels one. There's been good quarterbacks, but I think Cam Ward was really, he wasn't Cam Newton impactful though, right? Like Heisman caliber, will your team to victory quarterback. I don't know that. Yeah.
This is a mid team without him. He takes him to the Natty. I don't know if there was a quarterback in this cycle. I don't know. But I would disagree, and I would say that Hugh Freeze, at the very least, has recruited on par with Gene Chizik. Gene Chizik had a staff of stud recruiters. Let's just be clear about that. Definitely one of the main reasons why Auburn went to the national championship in year 1 under Gus is because of the job Gene Chizik and his staff did the prior years bringing in talent. That was a very talented team that made it to the national championship that year against Florida State. I will argue that he is out recruiting Gus. Hugh Freeze, you can argue he out recruited Gus when he was at Ole Miss and Gus was here at Auburn. So Hugh Freeze can really recruit. Will play calling improve? There's been times I have been play calling. Some of it, Ike, has just been some of the decisions that this coaching staff has made from a clock management standpoint at the end of halves to try to run out clock when running out clock or not running out the clock when you're trying to run RPO. and you know it goes. You ends up throwing the pick six. Like these types of things, I'm hoping that the coaching staff is able to improve upon. Play calling, as you've proven with your film studies, Ike, guys were open.
Yeah. And here's why I am not as critical of the play calling thing as maybe like Mike is. And he's like, oh, the system let these guys down. There's room to critique the system of how things go. But when you call a play and it actually is open and it should work and you don't execute it right, like that's not the fault of the play caller, number one. And number two, you handcuff yourself as a play caller when guys aren't either executing the things right that you've put out there for them, or you have to, in Coach Freeze's words, limit the playbook because we're like, let's make sure we can run things that you handcuff a play caller in those situations. So it's not like, okay, we got stuff available to us. We just can't call this stuff because they ain't going to run it right. They haven't executed right. We can't block it up the way we need to.
Right.
So yes, there's room to critique play. Absolutely. There's zero way that you can look at Auburn's offense and say there's no problems with play calling situationally. There's no way you can do that.
Can you say this? Can we say this? Play calling is symptomatic of a deeper issue with this offense. And I think
they're symbiotic, right? I think they go hand in hand, right? Like one impacts the other just as much as the other. It's yin and yang. Like I don't know that you can have excellent play calling guys and not execute it. You can have guys that are able to execute better called stuff and have better results, right? Like you should have run the ball in that scenario. You definitely have good running backs. Why aren't we running the ball more in these particular scenarios? Why are you calling a dang on play for Sam Jackson on 3rd and 2 or 3rd and goal? Like what are we doing right here? Like there's definitely room to critique play calling.
Yeah. And again, I go back to when I hear like Mike talk about the organization of the defense versus the organization of the offense. If the offense is lacking in some things, I think it's going to affect guys executing on Saturdays, the play calling. Like a lot of these things to me, yes, symbiotic of one another, but also symptomatic of some things that are not happening throughout the week in preparation for what's going to happen on Saturdays. Right. And so,
and I think everybody has to hold the L on that, right? Like,
yes,
coaches need to get in a better, because here's the thing that I hate the most, and this is where system I'll agree with. I don't like the multiple chefs in the kitchen. I've hated that the very moment he said that was a thing, and he said I don't care how long you've been doing that. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and I hate it. I hate it with a passion. And I don't want to ever hear you say that that's a thing again. Getting input from multiple people, fine. But it needs to be one guy's call at the end of the day. Special scenarios will, huddle up. What do you think? What do you see here? But not, well, we're on this part of the field. Now I'm going to hand the play calling duty. This is not a relay race. It is coaching offensive football. DJ Durkin does not say, all right, we're in the red zone. Charles Kelly, it's on you, my boy. No, he's defensive coordinator. I'm calling all of these joints, bro. I'll let you handle rotations of guys. And who do you think we're going to play cover 3 on this one? Cool. Well, let me get, this guy in here to play the deep third on this. And we're going to rotate to this. Okay, we're blitzing in this specific scenario on 3rd and long. I need to get my rabbit package in here. You decide which of the, I'm fine with that, bro. But if we're just out here at different points in time on the field and deciding, hey, man, I
ain't called to play in 5 plays, man.
Man, ain't it my turn, coach? What are we doing? No,
give me the joystick.
That's laughable, bro. And I don't want to hear that being a thing no more, bro. But at the same time, if I can look at this horribly mismanaged system and see stuff wide open, then I can't just blame the system. I can't do that. That doesn't make sense either.
It's a part of the problem, but it's not
the problem.
Yeah.
So listen, man. All of this, he's not coached, or not recruited better than these other guys. I don't know that there's any substantive argument that you can say that makes that true. Will play calling be better next year? How am I supposed to know the answer to that? Like, that's not really a question I can answer. I can tell you I hope it is. And then why is Kent Austin still on this staff? I think it's pretty clear, unless you know a QB developer that's better than Kent Austin, you roll with the guy that you have, and you don't just change it because it didn't work with Peyton. No disrespect to Peyton Thorne. No disrespect. Because it didn't work with Peyton Thorne, Kent Austin's not a good coach?
Right.
Is that what we're saying?
Because you only got one sample size. You only got one player. One player. That's why I say this has to work with this new QB.
Yeah.
This is why it has to work with him.
Now you see, are you guys you
got a bigger sample size now?
Listen, there is a part, and I use cooking analogies a lot when I talk about this kind of thing. There is a portion of being able to put the right recipe together that's about selecting the right ingredients. And if you're not good at picking your ingredients, I don't really care how good a chef you are. You put some spoiled tomatoes in the stew, it's going to taste nasty. And you got to add now a bunch of other stuff in here to try to fix. How do I get rid of this bad taste for this tomato that I picked that wasn't quite the right ripeness for what I was trying to do?
Why do I proceed to keep that bad tomato in this dish?
Right. Or am I just bad at picking tomatoes?
Yeah.
We're gonna answer a lot of those questions this year about this coaching staff. So yeah, I don't know that it's 100% fair to make that assessment, but you have some good indicators, and now you get a chance to eliminate some of this stuff and say, okay, it wasn't this, right? Like we found out, wasn't necessarily Montgomery that was the issue. Now, the offense looked better in spots because you had more explosiveness. Right now, the only thing I can say with confidence is Peyton Thorne wasn't the guy, and we might be able to say maybe Coach Freeze needs to hand the joystick over to somebody else. Right. But we can for sure eliminate one of those things this year because Peyton Thorne ain't there no more.
Right.
So we'll see. We'll see very soon what the answer to that question is. But appreciate the super chat there, Mr. Gibson. Another super chat here from Dustin who says, listen, bottom line is no kid has left here yet under Freeze, has gone on to do anything even mildly impressive, and most guys stayed. Speaking of the transfer portal specifically, like the guys that have transferred out that people listen.
I'm holding my breath on that one, Dustin. You're right as of today.
Right.
We still got spring ball coming up. I'm holding out for that.
Yeah, and to his point, though, like when you look at Robbie Ashford, he didn't go on and light the world up at South Carolina. He barely saw the field. When you look at guys who we like a Jay Fair, now injuries played a part in that, and they had some quarterback issues, but he didn't go light the world on fire at USC.
Sure. He was injured, though, a lot.
But. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Injuries played a part in that. Like, so you can go back and think about all of the players that have left. Now, a lot of those players, people weren't too sad about them leaving anyway. Like, I can't think of a guy that left via the transfer portal and everybody's like, no, oh my God, not him on offense specifically.
That is very true. That is very true. That is very true. I'm trying to, I can't think of, I can't really think of a kid that's even now has hit the portal there that Auburn is like, we should have held on to him.
Right. And so, to that point, they've done a good job of keeping the key players in. The question is now, again, I go back to my ingredients thing. It's like, okay, so some of those players you actually brought in that have now subsequently left, right? So now you're getting to the place of Walker White, Hank Brown, right? Like you brought those guys in. If they end up not being good even after they leave, the question now you have to ask yourself is, why'd you bring them in the first place? Like, were they ever
especially
going to be
if those numbers of people are piling up? Sometimes you miss. Sometimes kids are misevaluated. But if the number of players that are leaving are piling up like that, who are big name players, you have to begin to wonder what's your evaluation of these players looking like.
Yeah. So we yet to be seen on that. But yeah, so far I would agree with what you're saying there, Dustin. Shoot, I X'd out the wrong thing and I brought this. Oh no, this is him. It's just Dustin again. He said Walker White's during his Locked On Baylor interview said competition wasn't why he left, and then 5 seconds later said he knew he was leaving because of Jackson Arnold. Yeah. So what are your thoughts? Did you watch that interview at all, or did you just see like the social media snippets?
I've just seen snippets. I haven't sat down and watched the whole interview.
I watched maybe like the first few minutes of it, just because, of course, I wanted to hear what he had to say in context. And this is pretty much how I would like it. It seems as if, and he said that and I think Mike and I have already talked about this. We can dispel the idea that he was trying to take a shot at Coach Hugh Freeze. He said specifically, he was asked specifically when he said the comment about QB development being a part of the reason why he chose Baylor, that had nothing to do with Coach Freeze. He was asked a question about the teams who were approaching him in the transfer portal. Why did he choose Baylor instead of one of those others? And QB development was a reason why he chose Baylor over the other options. That was not a shot as perceived at his previous staff, and he made sure to text Coach Freeze, text Coach Austin, let him know that's not what it was, right? However, the rest of this stuff where and I had a very passionate argument with Mike G and B Will about this, where it wasn't about Jackson Arnold. He pretty much shot that down in an interview. It was about Jackson Arnold. He said specifically, it wasn't that he was scared of competition. He just didn't like the fact that you brought in a quarterback with that much eligibility left. So I don't mind competing, but I want to compete with a guy I know I can beat. Like, I don't know how to take that statement when you say you're not scared of competition, but this guy specifically, I did not want to compete with. And you point to his eligibility.
This is a tough one for me. Because I understand from a fan perspective that this sounds asinine, right?
Yeah.
But when has Auburn had a QB competition under Hugh Freeze?
Take Hugh Freeze out of that statement and ask that question again.
I hear you. I hear you. But what I'm saying is we've seen a transfer QB come in, and there's not much the other guys can do to remove that person from QB1. Right? I don't know if he felt that there will be a true competition.
Which is fair. That's fair. My problem is you chose Baylor, though, who clearly has a QB1. You didn't go somewhere where you knew you were going to be competing for quarterback one.
How many years that kid has eligibility?
I don't know. I don't know how many years Robert said.
Like it could be. I don't know. Yeah. I don't keep up their roster, but the kid could have 1 year left, and they're telling him he could be the guy. I don't know. But what I'm saying is, if you bring in someone in who has a lot of years of eligibility, and you just don't think that Hugh Freeze is going to remove this guy with who knows? I mean, people put Jackson Arnold on the millions of NIL of what he's gotten from showing up at Auburn. You just don't think that Hugh Freeze is going to give you that shot like Hank Brown didn't get the shot.
So Sawyer Robertson played 21 and 22 at Mississippi State in 23 at Baylor. So 24 so this will be his last year of eligibility. Yeah. 21 years old.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, this kid who has 1 year left, or
he's a redshirt junior, I think.
This kid who he has less eligibility than the guy who's coming in the door at all.
For sure. By a year.
I'll take that. I mean, that makes sense in the grand scheme.
And again, I would not be upset if he said those things and then he went somewhere where QB1 was in question and he had a legit shot to compete. It only not makes sense for me because he left this season before the spring.
Okay.
If he had gone into the spring and seen what the competition looked like, and then he transfers out somewhere where he was going to be likely the QB2 there with the opportunity to be QB1 next year, all of that would have made complete sense to me. Because, or if he had transferred from Auburn somewhere where he knew he was going to get a shot to be QB1 this year, then the move this year makes sense to me.
Sure.
All this other stuff, I'm like, bro, like that don't add up to me. And so I'm left with, you're not being 100% honest about your reasoning, or the whole I'm not scared of competition thing is a little bit of a farce. Like, it's not that you're scared of competition. You just you wanted to be in a competition where you thought you had a fair chance of winning, which is
that's my argument.
That's a completely fair statement to make. But I just don't think Baylor was the spot.
And I don't know how you make that point without taking a shot at Hugh Freeze.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because to make that point, Ike, you're definitely taking a shot at Hugh Freeze at that point.
Yeah.
Because you're calling out something that some people have been speculating for a minute about Hugh Freeze.
Right. So again, I that's why I don't think Walker's a bad. I don't think he wanted to badmouth Auburn, so he was trying to say what he needed to say without saying what he wanted to say.
Right.
And
in doing that,
you look duplicitous, and you're just like, oh well, you're talking on both sides of your neck right now, bro. Like, what do you mean?
Right.
But again, that's why I don't think Walker's a bad dude, which is why he doesn't get the who is Walker White treatment that some are suggesting I should give him in the comment section. He don't get that treatment because I don't feel like he's being bad, a bad guy. But at the same time, what you're saying ain't making a whole lot of sense. So I still have questions about it.
Sure.
Anthony Long super chat here says, I clicked the wrong one, my bad. Walker White's comment supports the theory that once Hugh Freeze chooses a guy, there isn't any competition. This is what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
But I'd argue, isn't that most coaches? Once you've decided on who your guy is, like that dude needs to lose the job. Wouldn't most coaches prefer to have a guy? Now, where it feels unfair is you brought in this new guy who really ain't proved a lot where he was, and you brought him in and you've given him the job. It made a little sense with Peyton Thorne because he had been a starter at a Power 5 at that point in time, was Power 5 place for a couple of years when he came in, as opposed to like none of these guys had really had any starting experience, minus TJ. If people forget, TJ Finley was still in that quarterback room before he left that summer. So once Finley left, he
literally had one foot out the door, though.
You had Robbie Ashford, who had played but hadn't really lit it up, and you had Holden Gerner. So like you didn't, and Hank Brown at the time, who was a true freshman. So you didn't have anybody with any like legitimate full season starting experience. I understand needing or feeling like you needed a guy that had a little bit more maturity and was ready to go day one. Didn't turn out to be that with Peyton Thorne. He wasn't ready day one, but I understand the desire to go get that guy and give him the job at that time. What I don't get is he didn't really come in and light it up during practice and earn it, but you still gave it to him. That's where I'm like, whoa, wait a minute.
And he lost the job and you ended up giving it back to him again.
Right.
Walker White saw that too, by the way.
Yeah. Let's see here. Harold Floyd, I can see if they produce what we are. I think he been used to seeing on the field. I'm getting on the Bruce Pearl train. I'm tired of seeing the same stuff on the field, regardless of coach and teams. Why aren't you on the Bruce Pearl train now, first and foremost? But I don't understand that. Same stuff on the field, regardless, or teams, we are cursed. So I guess what you're saying is if it continues to be the same thing on the field, then you're going to support basketball more than you're supporting football right now. Am I reading that correctly? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is that how you read that, Caesar?
Sounds like it.
Yeah. So again, there's no football and basketball do not overlap, except for like the very beginning non-conference schedule of basketball and the end of the football season. And now if Auburn does get an opportunity to play in the playoffs, then you'll have an overlap in that way.
Get on board, my guy.
But there's plenty of space to support both Auburn football and Auburn basketball.
Get on board. Don't make it conditional. Get on board.
Hey, man, listen, bro, just support them. It's all good.
Just get on board. That's don't do that to yourself.
Yeah. Let's see here. Doug Evans said earlier, great point on NIL. It might help the NBA by keeping some of the guys in college another year for more development and mean guys get to the NBA more season. Listen, the NBA product is not good right now. Like, it's just not. There's a lot of this is why I have a hard time with the argument about the number of skilled players there are in the league right now, equating to it being more difficult to win in the NBA or difficult to score. Mm-hmm. Yes, there are more skilled players, but they're not good basketball players because they haven't learned how to play college basketball is still a way more fundamentally sound product than the NBA because of the rules of how much you can play zone and the varying levels of skill that you have that allow you to have guys that are super specialized in things in college basketball more so. Like everybody is a stretch four now, and they all got ball guard skills and da da da. Like there's no. That's why guys like Draymond Green can stay in the league for however long he's been in there, because there just aren't a lot of Draymonds left that are just smart basketball players who don't have the same skill level as the best players in the league, but they are absolutely crucial to the success of teams. And you had a lot of that in the old school NBA, a lot of it.
A prime example of this, Ike. If you need an example of what Ike is talking about, look no further than last year's Olympics. And watching Team USA relying on heroic efforts from LeBron and Steph or Durant, guys who are in the latter stages of their careers to will Team USA to victory over other teams that in some cases don't even have an all-star. But those teams play well together and they play skilled ball. Like that's a prime example.
Yeah. You have all the skill in the world. You're the most skilled, easily the most skilled team out here, but you're eking out victories against teams that have 2 or 3 guys that may never score a bucket, but they're going to set the right screens and they're going to make it difficult for you to run your action. And they're going to go get crucial rebounds and they're going to block shots and they're going to defend their. Derek White was one of the most important people on that team just because he defended his butt off. And when he got hurt and he wasn't 100%, the team defense on the perimeter looked a lot different when Derek White wasn't able to play at 100%. You have to have those kind of guys. And to the point here in this comment, when you get guys who kind of understand basketball because you don't learn that in high school, the competition isn't as good all the way across the board. You're not going to get polished and ready to play professional basketball in high school. Right. There's very few guys that can make that leap and be good as a pro. There are some, right? LeBron Jameses of the world exist. Kevin Garnett, like Kobe's, they exist.
But those are anomalies, though, man.
But everybody thinks they are because they're super talented, and we have stopped valuing the ability to develop really across the board in a bunch of different industries, but absolutely in professional basketball, the developmental piece, which is why the freaking G League exists, because they realize we're getting a bunch of dudes out of college that just aren't ready. They're good, but they're not ready for this level of play, and we can't pay them millions of dollars to be bad. So NIL is helping to supplement that a little bit more. I agree with this comment 100%. And I think that was around the conversation around Tahad Pettiford potentially staying another year because NIL can be a factor in helping him develop. Mr. Gibson jumps back in and says, when is Coach Hugh Freeze due for another press conference? Probably pre-spring.
Yeah, so probably in the next 3 weeks or so. I think they start spring ball in February, second week in February or something like that.
Something like that, yeah. So that will be the next opportunity the media has to speak with him. And he's going to have a lot of questions that he needs to answer about some of the things that Mr. Gibson talked about in his comment about like play calling going into this next year, because that was a big part of the whole Lane Kiffin shade of, oh, yeah, I'm happy for Coach Nix. Glad you're going to get a chance to go over there and be a play caller. Right. So like I get it. But yeah, he's got questions that he's got to answer about that. And I am positive.
That's funny.
I'm positive that's going to be something that they talk about. All right. Any final thoughts before we get out of here, man?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, we are going to scoop. Appreciate everybody for being in here. Once again, thank you to the sponsor of the weekend tailgate, Golden's Cast Iron. Make sure you head over to goldenscastiron.com/WR. Code get your weight up for 15% off of weights. Code TWR, $65 off of fire pits and Kamado grills. If you haven't already, go ahead and join so you can be part of the Green Name Gang. We appreciate those of you who have already done that. Membership gifting, if you are Green Name and you want to give somebody, you can do that right now. Again, stop at our folks at Los Amigos over there. Get you some good Mexican food if you're in the Auburn area. And make sure that you hit up the good folks over at the Rogue Shop. If you got any sleep, stress, anxiety, or pain relief that you need, Rogue Shop's got a remedy for you. 15% off over there with code RAPPORT. Check us out on the network, all the podcast places. The Auburn Express is who we are on podcasts. We got the College Loop, Up Tempo, Just a Sec pods, as well as the Sooner Spotlight covering Oklahoma sports. They're still in basketball mode over there too. So y'all, if you're a Sooners basketball fan, you can check them out over there. Once we're definitely gonna get a crossover going when that Oklahoma game comes up for them. Also, I haven't mentioned this in a while. The merch store is out there. If you like some of the gear you've seen me rocking, because I do, Mike G is right. I do like just go and experiment and make stuff and then be rocking it on the show. People like, where you get that hat from? I'm like, I just made it for myself, man. It's in the merch store right now. I got some other stuff that's up there, some new stuff in the merch store. If you haven't checked that out, make sure you go over there. Before y'all get out of here, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, do all of those things. We are at the War Report on social media. Can't say that other one no more because it doesn't exist for right now. I'm sure it will be back.
Did they bring it back?
Supposedly it's back again already. I don't know. I don't keep up with it because I don't really get on there in the first place. But you can make sure you check us out at all of those.
Yeah, they're back.
Awesome. Well, it's back. We are TW Report on TikTok.
There you go.
But we'll be back at you with more great content later on this week. Until then, and as always, War Eagle.